CEO and co-founder of DLA Knight. I'm here with Pat, and we're going to be talking about a number of things. One is his book, Unlocking Yes: Sales Negotiation Lessons and Strategy. With you got to get the yellow sticker with the revised edition. And we're also going to be talking about negotiating strategies. Pat, where can people find you?
Well, just drop my name into any search engine and stand back. A lot of animal noises pop up. Patrick Tinney, sales author, or LinkedIn, whatever makes you happy.
Okay, brilliant. And so we're going to talk about 10 of the ugliest negotiating strategies and explain about them.
Sure.
We've only got 20 minutes, so we're going to have to rattle through them. But this is going to be fun. I've sat in some amazing negotiations, and I've often sat there and thought, what on earth is going on? Because something's playing out, and I don't know what it is. And I'm sure there's other salespeople and sales leaders are the same. So let's get started.
Sure.
Number one.
Of the ugliest?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So in your list, you've got buyer creates a bidding war with an account review.
Let's start there. I think that's important because I think that's the one that the sales universe will gravitate to quickly. In short, if the buyer puts your piece of business up for review, it generally is signaling three things. One, you don't have very much time at all. There's been a strategy change in the company, or there's been a management change. It's generally not quality, believe it or not. It's a strategic change. And when all else fails, first of all, you got to get a hold of everybody in that company and see what's wrong. If you can figure it out. If you can't, get your president to call their president. It's the smartest thing in the world to do because it's collegial at that point. But I'll tell you, it's brutal. And time compression, it's like an hourglass, and you got to get all over it.
Because normally what they'll do is they'll bring you in and they'll file you in and then say, we need 10%, 20%, 30%, or whatever off your prices.
They could do that, but what they do is they create a cattle call, which causes even more pressure. So you could you may have been the number one, and all of a sudden you're one of six.
Right. Okay. And so when you get the two CEOs to talk, what do you get them to do?
I think generally what you want to do is have your CEO just say, we've really worked hard at creating an environment where you could be more than successful. So in your mind's eye, what has changed in your present and future view? And then you get the answer.
And then you go quiet.
You get the answer.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Hit me with another one.
Okay. A buyer creates share and compare quotes scheme.
That's it's pretty close to the ugliest, because really what it is you've got a situation where your buyer is calling you in and they push a proposal across the table and said, quietly have a read. If you can beat
this will be a competitor's proposal.
Absolutely. Somebody's just come in and they've dropped this on my lap, and they're looking to undercut you. Do you want to beat it, or what do you want to do? And the problem is you're basically having to buy your own business back, or you're buying a piece of business that is edgy, because if they're willing to share your competitor's proposal, what will they do with your proposal? Mm-hmm. Your business is always for sale.
Yeah.
You can't. I would never take my best creative ideas to a buyer like this, ever.
Because they'll share them with the competition.
Yeah.
And you've walked away from business in this situation, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did it with Walmart. I walked from Walmart. I'm one of the few people in the world that has walked.
And when something like there was a change in your company or something, and there was a new CFO or something like that, and he checked your figures and he said it was the right thing to do.
No, they hated me. I was beaten severely. I was strapped daily for about 3 years until a new president showed up in the West Coast. It happened in Victoria, and he called up and he says, "Who's responsible for this deal?" I said, "Not me." He said, "Who made the Walmart decision?" I said, "I did." And he goes, "Brilliant." He says, "Thank God you had the courage."
Right. Number three, the secondary target strategy.
Oh, I love this one. This is like you're staring at beautiful Italian art, a sculpture. David. So what it is my friend Steve Kosick was the guy that I first saw it happen with at the Hudson's Bay Company. And what he was doing was he was shifting away from on-page advertising into flyers, but it was a transitional thing. And the first time I saw it, what he did was he beat us up on the on-page rates for days. Like he just dragged it out. And then finally he said with exasperation, he says, "I'm going to sign this contract, but you guys are just ripping me off." And we said, "Well, now we got to talk about the flyer distribution rates." He says, "You have been so horrible on that first round of negotiations. There will be no discussion about flyers. You send me the bloody contract, and if I see anything wrong with it, I'm just going to cross it out and I will sign it. But don't even talk to me about insert rates. You just beat me up so badly." Well, it was such a joke because the inserts were really what he was focused on. So he was trying to just hold that rate in stasis. It was lovely. It was
Nice.
beautiful.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Painful, but lovely.
Mm, mm. And to think that people think that they go into these negotiations and it's all nice and the buyer creates a performance-based strategy.
Yeah, that's the old. If you hear the term "skin in the game," that's really what it is. So really, what it comes down to, and I've had this happen a couple of times, and I generally call people out on it because really what they're saying is, "I'm going to take your money, Tim," meaning your services. "I'm going to use them. I'm going to measure them, and then I'm going to decide whether I'm going to pay you your money back. And then eventually I'm going to decide whether I'm actually going to pay you for your services." And I generally say, "I love this. Please count me in with one stipulation, one addendum." "Well, what is it?" "Well, I get to come into your offices and you're going to open up your books once a month so that I can see the progress that your people have made after I trained them." And that's when the explosion happens.
Yes, because if you're training if you're training salespeople, it's actually down to the salespeople's ability to execute, not on you.
Yeah, but it's also this whole idea that they're holding your money. They're holding your money, and you don't even know if you're going to get it back to begin with.
The rule book legitimacy strategy.
I love this one because you see, most companies have a rule book. Uh, Almost all of them do. And the thing with rule books is there's always little holes in them. So I had a situation years ago, and I actually wrote it into the book. I think it's a great example where uh, my extended warranty was running out on my Toyota, and I had been in the service center about, I don't know, about 8 weeks beforehand. And I said, "Put a note in my file, call me 2 weeks before, and I'll just bring the car and we can have a look at it," because it was a 5-year extended. Anyway, the guy didn't do anything. And I just happened to be getting ready to go away on holidays. It was a long weekend. And I called up and I said, "I think I'm running out of warranty here. Can you hold me over for a week?" And he goes, "Nope." I said, "Come on." I said, "I've been a customer forever." He says, "Nope." He says, "You buy it until that date." And so I said, "Can you go back to the manufacturer? Can you talk to somebody?" And so this went on for about an hour. And so what we were doing is we were drifting into the later part of Friday on a long weekend. And I finally said, "You have no interest in taking care of me here, do you?" He says, "To be honest with you," he says, "we don't have mechanics here for the long weekend." So he says, "You're toast." That's what he was saying. So I jumped in my car really quickly and drove down to the dealership and threw my keys on the counter. And I said, "I'm still under warranty, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Write up an order and timestamp it right now." He said, "That's crazy. You can't do that." I said, "I'm under warranty, am I not?" He went into his manager's office. All you can see was the arms waving and people pointing. And anyway, he comes out and he stamps it. And all of a sudden, this little Scottish gent turns up beside me. And we took the car out for a test drive. I had a leaky seal in my transmission. You
And you got
see,
it fixed.
you see, with a rule book, it has great benefits. The only problem is if you can find the hole in the rule book, you can bang somebody over the head with their own rule book, and then what do they do?
The burden of proof strategy.
This is a hard one, I think, because really what they're doing is they're calling your brand into question, your execution, your quality. And they're really what they're doing is they're questioning the quality triangle, whether you can deliver on time with quality at the right price. And if you've been around for more than a decade, you've got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customer cases and, all kinds of recommendations and testimonials. But they may do it anyway. And so what you do is you say, all right, so we'll do something like this. We'll do something. But my recommendation is, so they don't understand your profitability, almost give it to them. Not give it to them, but go below what would be considered any kind of a normal rate and say you get one chance. And by the way, we're going to do it over in this little corner. So you don't get the full suite.
Take me through that again.
Well, the idea is to give them a sample
Right.
of your services, but not the whole ecosystem.
Okay.
So take them over into a corner of your ecosystem and say, all right, so let's put the flashlight on this, measure it. And by the way,
Like a pilot.
Well, sort of like.
Yeah.
But you see, the question is not that you're an unknown, because you are known.
Yep.
The question is, will you proof up under rigor?
Right.
And so the question is rigor. I can beat that every day of the week.
So the reverse auction strategy.
So that's an axe fight. Going with a big one. So really what you're doing is it's kind of like Gladiator. There's usually about a half a dozen participants. You're all sitting around in some very hot room with stacking chairs, and you get called in one at a time. And you see the guy stagger out of the meeting. Okay, next up. And then it comes down to 4 of you, then it comes down to 2 of you, and in the end, you're buying the business. Well, that's crazy. That's nuts. If you go into that, really what you're doing is you're saying, I need a piece of business that will keep the troops fed. That's all.
Yep.
Not going to make any money on it. And that's crazy. I've seen companies do it. I actually walked away from a company who operated that way. I just said, I can't fix you. You're so broken.
I've been in situations where people promise things that they couldn't promise just to get the business. And then that company went bust, and 5 years I was back in there basically selling them a system. The only issue I have, it was public money they were dealing with.
Yeah, you've really got to be careful. The company that I was involved with, they had this mindset that if they could get the customer to like them enough, then they could raise rates over time.
Okay.
And I thought that was stupid. I just thought, you can't control raw material costs.
The stick and carrot strategy.
So you see a lot of this in the diplomatic world, but believe it or not, it happens quite regularly in the corporate world, and it generally is about rate. And so there's one of 2 ways of looking at it. One is that you're buying your own business back because they're saying, I'm going to pull all the business unless I get a lower rate. What I do is I generally say, tell you what, we'll have a look at the rate, but you present the following markets to me as a competitive quote, so that I can quote on these markets and justify lowering the rate in the others. So I'm growing the pie, and that smooths everything out.
So in terms of you're lowering, but you're increasing what you're
Correct.
you're selling.
Yeah.
The bonus round strategy.
Oh my God! Back to my friend Steve Kosick. This is what I call the confusion negotiation. It's totally confusion, and he would do it. He wouldn't do it with me. But I'd be bringing my guys in from, say, Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Vancouver, and they'd all come in, and the Hudson's Bay Company, their annual budget was $100 million. That's like 20 years ago. So you can imagine what it would be today. And they were so desperate to sell something to the Bay, right? And Steve was notorious. And so he would almost get to the point where he was going to sign. And then all of a sudden he'd drop his head and he'd go, "Oh, God, I just don't know if I can play." Start lifting up papers and looking at documents about, "Oh, Jesus, what am I going to tell the guys upstairs about this? They're going to kill me. I don't know, guys. And he whispered to himself. And all of a sudden, the person on the other side is just like they've got the contract. It's literally sliding across the desk. And they can't help themselves. And they say, "Steve, I think we've almost got a deal here, but you look troubled. What can we do to help you?" And that's when Steve would lift his head and say, "What do you got in mind, boys?" And that's where he always picked up extra points or extra value. I talked to him years later on a golf course, and I said, "Okay, let's talk about the confusion move." And he goes, "Oh," he says, "Pat," he says, "inside the company, I referred to it as the bonus round." He said, "Honest to God, it was like free money, and I made my company millions and millions of dollars, and that's how I made my bonuses every year." So I actually named my third book The Bonus Round.
Because the sales is so close, the person's got their pen in the hand, and the salesperson is holding their breath, and then.
Well, it's like if you're a fisherman, you're out fishing, and you got this fish on and the pole is bent, and all of a sudden the pole goes boom, and the line is all limp. What do? Scream.
And the last one, the growing list strategy.
So this is a really, really, really tricky one, and it really compresses time badly. It can happen at the beginning of a negotiation. It can happen at an end. It rarely happens at the beginning, but when it does, it's like, watch out. So you're in a meeting, you're sharing some sensitive information with a buyer, and he goes, "Damn, that's good. You can't bill me for that." "What do you mean I can't bill you for that?" "No, you can't bill me for that, but it's a great idea. Thank you." And then they continue, and you're going, "Well, I'm never going to do that again." Or it can happen at the end when it has a feel of, it's almost sinister. So the person is literally writing their name, and they're halfway through their name, and they stop and they look up and it's, "You know what? I like this contract. You guys are big corporate players. Would you please add this, 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 and this," and just kind of tuck it in underneath. "You guys have got lots of money. Then I'll just finish my signature here." It's brutal. So what you have to do is you have to make a list of the correct cost of that information, send it to them, and say, "This will never happen again."
Right.
You got us once, but it'll never happen again.
So we've rattled through 10 things there. Fantastic sharing your experience on that, Pat. One of the things you talk about in your book is how to do a go into a negotiation. And I've been into negotiations where everybody was sitting there, the room was hot, and everyone's looking at the chair, and I'm thinking, I know what's going to happen. And I sit in the chair, and the chair collapses. But there is a way, isn't there, as salespeople, that we should be going into those meetings and running those meetings. So talk about that and the professionalism that we should be having in those.
So I think what you do in those situations is that you act underwhelmed. In other words, you just sit there and you go, "I was waiting for you to do it. What do you got next? What's your backup plan?" So we've already covered that now. Can't make it any worse. So what's the backup plan? They never have a backup plan. So once you out them that way, they kind of go, "Oh, dang, did not see that kind of smoothness coming at me." You see, it really comes down to brinksmanship in many cases, right? And that move that you're talking about, to me, is a tactical move. It's
Yeah.
just like that.
So when you went into negotiations, how much preparation did you put into it, and what did you do?
It was always scaled on the size of the contract.
Right.
So if the contract was $1 million, it probably got a week's work, 2 weeks
Right.
work. If it was 10 million, it got 10 times that amount.
Right.
And it also depended on how many markets were involved. So I represented 125 markets in Canada. Now, the strangest thing is it's not the price. So I would do all kinds of cost modeling. So I
Yeah.
would know exactly where my profitability was, because I was one of the few guys that went out and looked at all the machinery, talked to everybody how they allocated costs, et cetera, et cetera. I actually created the first of its kind study within the company, because everybody was allocating costs differently, and it made no sense to me. So the long story short is, the strangest thing of all is you have to understand the economics and the geography, the growth potential, the ECDEV, economic development potential of the market, and that dictates so much.
Right. Okay. So it's not just about about today and the profitability, but it's also about the future and the possible growth.
And the way that you're able to do what I would call a reconciliation of the market. In other words, if they say, all right, tell me about this piece of the market, tell me about that piece of the market, tell me about this piece of the market, and they start to unbundle it all, you have to be prepared to reaggregate it.
Right.
And have it make sense with them in a really simple language. See, I think a lot of people try to sound brilliant. I try to sound like a farmer leaning on a rock fence.
Right.
Simple. Did you notice in my book there's hardly any long words?
Yes, I did. Yes.
It's odd, isn't it?
No. It's very easy to read because there isn't any long words. I mean, there's no bullshit in there.
You don't have to read anything twice.
Yeah, there's no fluff. There's no, because some people like fluff books out, and there's none of that in there at all.
Yeah, the thing is that my lifetime deal book, without talking about management, was around $400 million. And then I was in management for about another 15 years, which if I did all the strat planning, product testing, product launches, et cetera. So if I added all that in together, I mean, the insert distribution business, when I took it over, was 40 million. By the time I finished with it, it was 115 million and being covered by New York stock markets.
Pat, thank you so much for coming in today and talking about negotiation. It's not something I've covered, and I've done, and I've done five. You're my 520th interview.
Wow.
So if you haven't got it, there's Patrick's book, Unlocking Yes, and you need to get the one with the yellow sticker,
the
revised edition. And if you want to know anything about negotiation, and if you're in sales, in fact, if you buy anything, I was talking to Pat in the preparation for this, and I said I did a negotiation course, and it changed my life. I've never paid full price for anything.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that the biggest blunder in the market today is people estimating their negotiation skills.
Yes, totally agree.
And it's an unforced error. Pat,
where can people find you?
Well, LinkedIn is where I hang out a lot, and I've just got so much material up on the internet. And by the way, launching two new things. I've just launched an executive recruitment company here in North America, and I'm about to launch an online learning portal similar to like a Udemy.com, but it's called sales-gorilla.com. And I've already completed just under 500 short videos, and I'll be adding tons more material. It'll end up being about 100 hours of video.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming on, Pat. It's been really great. Appreciate it.
Do you know what?
I've had a ton of fun. Thank you.
I had